The war room was silent except for the soft hum of machines. Ambassador Thilla stood at the center of the great hall, watching the holographic display that floated above the table. Red lights spread across the star map like a disease. Each red light was a world that had fallen to the enemy. There were too many red lights now. Thilla was a Solari, a species known for their calm minds and careful thinking. Her blue skin was pale with worry. Her 4 eyes moved across the map, counting the losses. The Vorith Dominion had been at war with the Allied systems for almost 2 years. They were winning. Around her stood the representatives of 12 great civilizations. The insect-like Kethrani clicked their mandibles nervously. The tall, thin Orvasians whispered among themselves. The stone-bodied Grelmak stood still as mountains. But even they seemed afraid. Everyone in this room controlled fleets of thousands of ships. Everyone in this room was losing. "We have lost contact with the Pelleran system," announced a military officer. His voice was tired. "Their defense fleet has been destroyed. The civilian evacuation was only partial." Thilla closed her eyes. The Pelleran system had 40 billion people. She did not want to think about how many had not escaped. "How many ships did the Vorith lose in the attack?" asked Lord Vareth of the Orvasians. "7, the officer replied. "They lost 7 ships. The room fell silent again. The Vorith bioships were unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. They were alive. They grew. They healed themselves. They ate the metal of destroyed ships and used it to make more of themselves. Every battle made the enemy stronger. Thilla stepped forward. She had been thinking about this moment for weeks. She knew what she was about to say would cause trouble, but she saw no other choice. "There is one fleet we have not called upon," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hearts were beating fast. "There is one species that has not joined this war. I propose that we invoke Article 7 of the Galactic Concord and request military aid from the Human Systems Alliance." The reaction was immediate and terrible. The Kethrani representative made a sound like breaking glass. The Orvasians stepped backward as if Thilla had drawn a weapon. Even the Grelmak, who never showed emotion, turned their great stone heads toward her with something like horror in their ancient eyes. "You do not know what you ask," said High Arbiter Kolvex. Kolvex was a Merethian, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. He had lived for over 6,000 years. He had been present at the founding of the Galactic Concord. His body was frail now, supported by a floating chair, but his mind was still sharp. His word was law in this chamber. "I know exactly what I ask," Thilla replied. She pointed at the map. "I ask for survival. The humans have the largest and most advanced military in known space. They have weapons we have never seen used. They have ships that have never been tested in battle. And they sit in their little corner of the galaxy, doing nothing, while the rest of us die." "They do nothing because we ask them to do nothing," Kolvex said. His voice was gentle but firm. "The preservation doctrine is absolute. Human warships do not leave Sol Sector. Human soldiers do not fight in foreign wars. This is the agreement. This is the law." "Laws can be changed," Thilla argued. "Surely this situation demands that we reconsider. The Vorith are not just defeating us. They are eating us. They are growing stronger with every victory. In another year, they will be unstoppable. In 2 years, they will control everything." Kolvex was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with sadness. "Young one, do you know why the preservation doctrine exists?" Thilla hesitated. She knew the official history. Humans had joined galactic civilization about 4,000 years ago. They had been peaceful at first, explorers and traders and scientists. Then something had happened, a war. The details were classified at the highest levels. "I know there was a conflict," she said carefully, "the Arxelian incident, but the records are sealed. I have never been able to access the full history." Kolvex nodded slowly. "The records are sealed for good reason. What happened during the Arxelian War is not taught to younger species. It is not discussed in open forums. It is the great shame of our civilization that we allowed it to happen, and the great mercy of the humans that they agreed to our terms afterward." "What terms?" Thilla asked. "What really happened?" Kolvex looked around the room. The other ambassadors would not meet his eyes. They knew. The older species all knew. It was the younger civilizations, those who had risen in the last few thousand years, who had been kept ignorant. The Arxelian Empire was a great power, Kolvex began. They ruled 400 star systems. They had billions of soldiers. They believed they were the mightiest force in the galaxy. When they encountered the young human colonies, they saw easy prey. They attacked without warning. They destroyed 3 human worlds. They killed 16 billion people in a single week. Thilla listened with growing unease. She had heard parts of this story before, but Kolvex was speaking with a weight that suggested something terrible was coming. The humans responded, Kolvex continued. They gathered their fleets. They built new weapons. And then they went to war. He paused. 1 year later, the Arxelian Empire was gone. Gone, Thilla repeated. You mean they surrendered? No. Kolvex's voice dropped to almost a whisper. I mean gone. Erased. Every world, every ship, every station, every colony, every outpost. The humans did not stop when the Arcelian military was destroyed. They did not stop when the Arcelian government surrendered. They did not stop when the Arcelian people begged for mercy. They hunted every last Arcelian in the galaxy. They created machines that could detect Arcelian genetic material. These machines searched for survivors for decades. When the war was over, there were no Arcelians left. Not one. An entire species, a civilization of trillions, was completely and totally destroyed. Thilla felt cold. Her 4 eyes were wide. She wanted to speak, but no words came. Kolvex reached out with a trembling hand and touched a control on his chair. A file appeared in Thilla's personal display. It was marked with more security warnings than she had ever seen. This is footage from the final days of the war, Kolvex said. Watch it, then tell me if you still want to invite the humans into this conflict. Thilla watched the file that night, alone in her quarters. The next morning she withdrew her proposal. She never spoke of the humans again. But the war continued, and the Vorath kept winning. The history taught in schools across the galaxy was simple and clean. Humans had come from a small blue world called Earth. They had developed space travel later than most species. They had joined the Galactic Concord as friends and partners. They were creative and curious. They built beautiful things. They made excellent trading partners. This history was true, but it was not complete. The complete history was kept in sealed archives. Only the oldest species and the highest officials knew the full story. It was a story that changed how you saw the universe. It was a story that kept certain ambassadors awake at night. 4,000 years ago, humanity had been new to the stars. They had established colonies on a dozen worlds. They had met other species and made peaceful contact. They seemed like a gentle people. A bit emotional, perhaps. A bit unpredictable. But overall, they appeared to be a welcome addition to galactic civilization. The Arxelian Empire disagreed. The Arxelians were a proud species. They had conquered hundreds of worlds over thousands of years. They believed that strength was the only true measure of worth. When they looked at the young human colonies, they saw weakness. They saw opportunity. The attack came without warning. 3 human worlds were targeted. The Arxelians did not send diplomats or demands. They simply appeared in orbit and began firing. Cities burned, oceans boiled. The sky itself caught fire as the atmosphere was set ablaze. 16 billion humans died in 6 days. Men, women, and children. Entire families were erased in seconds. The screams of the dying were broadcast across space, picked up by distant listening stations. The Arxelians expected surrender. They expected the surviving humans to beg for mercy, to offer tribute, to accept their place as a conquered people. This is what every other species had done when faced with Arxelian power. The humans did not surrender. Something else happened instead. The human government held an emergency meeting. Military leaders, scientists, and politicians gathered in a bunker on Earth. They watched the footage from the destroyed worlds. They listened to the last messages from the dying. They saw what the Arxelians had done to their people, and something changed. Later historians would try to explain what happened in that room. Some said it was rage. Some said it was grief. Some said it was something older and darker, something that lived deep in the human soul, something that had been sleeping for centuries and was now awake. Admiral Catherine Volkov was given command of the human fleet. She was a small woman with gray hair and quiet eyes. She had been a respected officer, known for her careful tactics and her concern for the lives of her crew. After the meeting in the bunker, she became something else. Her first order was simple: no mercy, no prisoners, no survivors. The human fleet launched within weeks. It was not a large fleet by Arxelian standards. The Arxelians had thousands of warships. The humans had hundreds. The Arxelians were confident. They had defeated larger forces before. They had never fought humans before. The first battle took place in the Karath system. The Arxelian fleet outnumbered the humans 3-1. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, every Arxelian ship was destroyed. The human fleet lost 12 ships. 12. The Arxelians were shocked but not worried. They gathered more ships. They called in reserves from across their empire. They assembled a fleet of 5,000 warships, the largest force they had ever created. Surely this would be enough to crush the human threat. The second battle took place near the Arxelian border world of Veth Prime. The humans arrived with 300 ships. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Arxelian fleet was scattered wreckage floating in the void. The humans lost 31 ships. Now the Arxelians were afraid. They sent diplomats to the Galactic Concord, begging for intervention. They offered to pay reparations. They offered to return any captured territory. They offered anything the humans wanted if only the attacks would stop. The human response came from Admiral Volkov herself. It was broadcast across every channel in Arxelian space. "You touched our children," she said. Her voice was calm. Her eyes were empty. "There will be no negotiation. There will be no surrender accepted. There will be no peace until every Arxelian world is ash and every Arxelian ship is dust. This is not a war. This is an extinction. We suggest you pray to whatever gods you believe in, because they are all you have left." The humans kept their promise. World by world, system by system, they dismantled the Arxelian Empire. They did not occupy. They did not conquer. They destroyed. Arxelian cities were bombarded from orbit until nothing remained but glass and shadow. Arxelian ships were hunted across the galaxy, no matter how far they ran. When the Arxelian military was gone, the humans did not stop. When the Arxelian government collapsed, the humans did not stop. When the Arxelian people fled to distant moons and hidden stations, the humans found them. The most terrible thing was not the weapons the humans used. It was the machines they built afterward. Small, intelligent drones that could detect Arxelian genetic material from great distances. These machines spread across the former Arxelian territory like a plague. They searched every ship. They scanned every world. When they found Arxelians, they killed them. The hunting machines operated for 50 years. By the end, there were no Arxelians left in the galaxy. Not one survivor, not one child, not one elder hiding in a forgotten corner of space. A species that had existed for 10,000 years was gone, as completely as if they had never existed at all. The Galactic Concord watched in horror. They tried to intervene. They sent diplomats to Earth, begging the humans to show mercy. The diplomats were treated politely and sent home with a simple message: "This is not your concern." When the hunting finally stopped, Admiral Volkov addressed the Concord one last time. She was older now. Her hair was white. Her eyes were still empty. "We are done," she said. "The Arxelians are gone. We have no further quarrel with anyone. We will return to our worlds. We will raise our children. We will build and create and dream, as we have always done. But let this be a lesson to the galaxy. We are a peaceful people. We wish only to live in harmony with others. But if anyone ever touches our children again, we will do this again, and again, and again, until there is no one left to threaten us." The preservation doctrine was written the following year. It was not a punishment. It was a desperate attempt to make sure that the sleeping monster would never wake again. And for 4,000 years it worked. 3 years into the war, the situation was desperate. Ambassador Thilla had not forgotten what she saw in the classified files. The images haunted her dreams. But desperation has a way of making terrible options seem reasonable. Every day, more worlds fell to the Vorth. Every day, more billions died. Every day, the enemy grew stronger. She began to meet in secret with other young ambassadors, representatives from species who had risen to power in the last 2,000 years. species who had not been present during the Arcelian War, species who knew only the modern humans, not the monsters of ancient history. There were 7 of them in total. They met in private rooms with blocked communications. They spoke in whispers, even when they were sure no one could hear. The humans of today are not the humans of 4,000 years ago, argued Corveth, a young Kethrani with bright green eyes. I have visited Earth. I have walked their cities. They are kind people. They build hospitals on frontier worlds. They send teachers to developing colonies. They create art and music and poetry. How can we believe that such people would commit genocide? Thala wanted to believe him. She truly did. I have seen the files, she said quietly. I have seen what they did. The footage is real. It is not propaganda. But it was so long ago, said Meridia, an Orvassian diplomat with silver hair. Civilizations change. Species evolve. The humans have had 4,000 years to become something different. Are we the same people we were 4,000 years ago? The question hung in the air. It was a good question. The group began to study the Modern Human Systems Alliance. They watched recordings of human diplomats at work. They read reports from species who traded with Earth regularly. They examined every piece of information they could find about contemporary human society. What they found was encouraging. The humans had built a peaceful civilization. Their military was large, yes, but it had not been used in any major conflict since the Arcelian War. Human scientists were at the forefront of medical research. Human artists created works that were celebrated across the galaxy. Human charitable organizations operated on dozens of worlds, helping species they had never met. Most importantly, the humans seemed to understand what they were. Several human leaders had spoken publicly about the need to maintain peace, to control their darker impulses, to prove to the galaxy that humanity could be trusted. They know what they did, Corveth said one night. They remember, and they are trying to be better. Surely that counts for something. Thala was almost convinced. Almost. The group drafted a formal appeal. They were careful with their words. They did not ask for human war fleets. They asked only for limited assistance, defensive ships, escort vessels, support units that would protect civilian evacuations. Surely the humans could help in this small way without awakening the darkness inside them. The appeal was sent to the Human Systems Alliance through secret channels. The group waited nervously for a response. It came within hours, but it was not from a diplomat. Fleet Admiral Marcus Chen appeared on the screen. He was an older man with gray at his temples and tired lines around his eyes. He wore the uniform of the Human Defense Force, but there was nothing threatening in his manner. He looked like a grandfather. He looked like someone you could trust. Thank you for your message, Chen began. His voice was soft. Thank you for believing that we have changed. In many ways, you are right. We have spent 4,000 years building a different kind of civilization. We teach our children about peace. We celebrate cooperation. We have worked very hard to become the people you see today. Thala felt hope rising in her chest. Perhaps this would work after all. Then Chen's expression changed, just slightly. A shadow passed behind his eyes. But I must be honest with you, he continued. The thing that destroyed the Arcelians is not gone. It is still inside us. Every human, from the youngest child to the oldest elder, carries it within them. We have learned to control it. We have built our entire civilization around containing it. But it is always there waiting. He leaned forward, his eyes looking directly at the camera. If we enter this war, we will win. That is not pride speaking. It is simple truth. Our weapons are more powerful than anything you have seen. Our tactics are more ruthless than anything you can imagine. We have spent 4,000 years preparing for a conflict we hope will never come. If the Vorith threaten us directly, we will destroy them. Completely. Utterly, as we destroyed the Arcelians. Thala felt the hope in her chest turn cold. But that destruction will not stop with the Vorith, Chen said quietly. Once we begin, something changes inside us. The careful controls we have built start to fail. The rage that has been sleeping for 4,000 years starts to wake, and it does not want to go back to sleep. He paused, collecting himself. I have studied the Arcelian War. Every commander in our fleet has studied it. We know what happened. We know that our ancestors did not intend to commit genocide. They intended to fight a war. They intended to protect their people. But once the killing started, they could not stop. The anger was too great. The hatred was too deep. By the time they realized what they were doing, it was too late. Chen's voice dropped to almost a whisper. If you invite us into this conflict, we might save you from the Vorith, but you will not recognize us when the war ends. You will not want to. The friendly humans you have known, the teachers and doctors and artists, will be gone. In their place will be something cold and terrible and utterly focused on destruction. We might not be able to come back from that. And neither will you. He straightened in his chair. The preservation doctrine exists to protect you, not from an enemy, from us, from what we become when we are unleashed. We agreed to the restrictions gladly, because we fear ourselves more than anyone else fears us. Please do not ask us to break those chains. The galaxy might not survive what follows. The message ended. The 7 ambassadors sat in silence for a long time. One by one, they deleted the appeal. One by one, they returned to their official duties. They never met in secret again. But the war continued, and the question remained, what would happen if the humans had no choice but to fight? They would not have to wait long to find out. The Voreth were not stupid. They knew about the preservation doctrine. They knew that human warships were restricted to Sol Sector. They believed this meant they were safe as long as they stayed away from human space. They were partly right, but they did not understand the danger of getting too close. Hive Commander Zareth stood on the bridge of the largest bioship ever grown. It was called the Eternal Hunger, and it was the size of a small moon. Inside its living walls, millions of Voreth soldiers waited for orders. Behind it floated a fleet of 3,000 warships, each one grown from the metal of destroyed enemy vessels. The war had been good to the Voreth. They had consumed 17 civilizations. Their territory had expanded by 400%. Their population had increased by billions. Every victory made them stronger. Every defeat made their enemies weaker. Now they were preparing for their greatest conquest yet. The Solari homeworld was only 3 light years from the edge of human space. It was rich with resources. It had a population of 60 billion. It would feed the hive for generations. Zareth chose his staging area carefully. He positioned the fleet at the very edge of the Sol Sector buffer zone. This was the imaginary line that marked where human defensive territory began. As long as he stayed on the right side of that line, the humans could not touch him, or so he believed. High Arbiter Kolvex received the alert in the middle of the night cycle. His ancient hearts nearly stopped when he saw the report. The entire Voreth main fleet was positioned less than 1 light year from the outermost human colony. He immediately requested an emergency communication with Fleet Admiral Chen. Chen appeared on the screen within minutes. His face was calm, but there was something in his eyes that made Kolvex very afraid. "I assume you have seen the Voreth fleet positions?" Chen said. It was not a question. "I have," Kolvex replied. His voice trembled. "Admiral, I must ask you to remain calm. The Voreth are not inside your territory. They are merely close to it. They are preparing to attack the Solari, not human worlds." Chen nodded slowly. "I understand that. However, the buffer zone exists for a reason. Any military force within 2 light years of our colonies represents a potential threat. Our defense systems are already active. Our patrol ships are on high alert." Kolvex felt sweat forming on his ancient skin. What does that mean? It means that if a single Voreth weapon discharges in our direction, even accidentally, our automated systems will classify it as an attack. Once that classification is made, the full defense protocol will activate. And what happens then? Chen was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was very quiet. "Then we go to war, and there will be nothing I can do to stop it." Kolvex gripped the arms of his floating chair. "Admiral, please. You must find a way to prevent this. The Solari are our allies. We cannot abandon them. But if the humans enter this conflict—" "I know," Chen said. "Believe me, I know. I have spent my entire career praying this day would never come. But the Voreth have made a terrible mistake. They think the doctrine protects them. They think our restrictions are a weakness. They do not understand that the doctrine exists because we beg to be chained. Because we know what we are. Then what can we do?" Chen leaned forward, his eyes intense. Keep them away from us, Arbiter. I do not care what it costs. I do not care how many ships you have to sacrifice. Build a wall of your own forces between the Vorith and human space. Do not let a single Vorith vessel cross that line. Do not let a single stray shot enter our territory. You are asking us to fight alone, to protect you. No. Chen shook his head. I am asking you to protect them. The Vorith do not know what they are playing with. If they wake the monster inside us, we will not stop with their fleet. We will not stop with their homeworld. We will hunt them across the galaxy until there is nothing left. Just like the Arxelians. Just like anyone who has ever threatened our people. Kolvex remembered the footage from 4,000 years ago. He remembered the screaming. He remembered the fire. We will do what we can, he said finally. But Admiral, if the worst happens, pray that it does not, Chen said, for the sake of everyone, including us. The humans who survive this war will not be the humans you know. They will be something else, something colder. We might win the war and lose ourselves forever. I do not want that. My people do not want that. But if we are pushed, he stopped, seeming to struggle with his words. Just keep them away from us, Arbiter. Please. The communication ended. Kolvex immediately called an emergency session of the Galactic Concord. Within hours, every available Allied ship was redirected from their current positions. They were not sent to defend the Solari homeworld. They were not sent to fight the Vorith. They were sent to form a barrier between the Vorith fleet and human space. Hive Commander Zareth watched the Allied ships arrive with confusion. They were not attacking his fleet. They were simply sitting in space, forming a wall between him and the distant human colonies. What are they doing? He asked his subordinates. Why are they protecting the humans? The humans are not even in this war. His tactical advisor studied the sensor readings. I do not know, Commander. It makes no strategic sense. They are weakening their own defenses to protect a species that refuses to help them. Zareth felt a flicker of unease. Something was wrong here. The prey was behaving strangely. They were sacrificing themselves not to slow his advance, but to keep him away from creatures who were supposed to be neutral. He sent a message to the Allied forces. Explain your actions. Why do you form a barrier against us? We have no quarrel with the humans. We do not intend to enter their space. The response came from Kolvex himself. You are close enough, the ancient Myrethian said. His voice was tired and filled with fear. Please, Commander, turn your fleet around. Attack the Solari from another direction. Attack anyone else. But do not come any closer to human space. For the sake of all living things in this galaxy, do not wake the sleeping giant. Zareth did not understand, but the fear in the old creature's voice was real. Whatever the humans truly were, even their allies were terrified of them. For the first time in the war, the Hive commander hesitated. The war ended not with a great battle, but with a slow exhaustion. Hive commander Zareth had hesitated at the edge of human space. That hesitation cost him momentum. The Allied forces, desperate and united by their fear of what might happen if they failed, fought harder than they ever had before. They did not fight to win. They fought to survive long enough for the Vorith to tire. 6 months of brutal conflict followed. Worlds burned. Fleets were destroyed. Billions died on both sides. But the Allied species held the line. They kept the Vorith away from human space. They paid for that distance with blood. In the end, the Vorith simply ran out of resources. Their bioships needed constant feeding. Their soldiers needed constant replacement. The empire they had built was too large to sustain. One by one, their conquered territories began to rebel. One by one, their fleet commanders began to retreat. The ceasefire was signed on a neutral station far from any homeworld. Representatives from all sides gathered to mark the end of the conflict. It was not a victory celebration. Too many had died for celebration. It was simply an acknowledgement that the killing was over. Ambassador Thilla attended the ceremony. She looked older now. The war had aged everyone. But she had survived. Her homeworld had survived. In the end, that was all that mattered. She noticed the human delegation sitting quietly in a corner of the Great Hall. There were only 3 of them. They had sent no warships, no soldiers, no weapons. They had contributed nothing to the victory. Yet somehow, their presence dominated the room. The other species kept their distance from the humans. They spoke in whispers when they passed by. They avoided eye contact. Even the Vorith, the great conquerors who had nearly destroyed galactic civilization, seemed uncomfortable near the small human group. Thilla found herself walking toward them. She did not know why. Perhaps she needed to understand. Perhaps she needed to face the creatures who had haunted her nightmares for years. One of the humans noticed her approach. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. He wore simple civilian clothes, not a uniform. A small badge identified him as Dr. Emil Vasquez, historical consultant. Ambassador Thilla, he said, rising to greet her, it is an honor to meet you. I have read about your efforts during the crisis. You showed great courage. Thilla was surprised by his warmth. This was not what she had expected from a member of the most feared species in the galaxy. Thank you, she managed. I did what I had to do. Vasquez nodded. That is often how history works. Ordinary people doing what they must in extraordinary times. He gestured to an empty chair. Would you like to sit? I imagine you have questions. Most people do, when they finally meet us face to face. Thilla sat down slowly. The other two humans, both women, smiled at her politely and continued their quiet conversation. I have been thinking about your people for a long time, Thilla admitted. I have seen the classified files. I know what happened during the Arxelian War. And I have met Admiral Chen, in a way. His message to our coalition was memorable. Vasquez nodded sadly. The Admiral is a good man. He carries a heavy burden. All of our military leaders do. They train their entire lives for a war they hope will never come. They maintain weapons they pray will never be used. It is a strange kind of service. Thilla studied the human carefully. He seemed so normal, so harmless. It was difficult to connect this gentle scholar with the images she had seen in those ancient files. How do you live with it? She asked finally. Knowing what your species did, knowing what you are still capable of. Vasquez was quiet for a moment. He seemed to be choosing his words carefully. We live with it the same way any reformed person lives with their past, he said. Every day we choose who we want to be. We build schools instead of dreadnoughts. We send doctors instead of soldiers. We answer insults with patience because we know what happens when we answer with fury. He looked out at the gathered ambassadors, beings from dozens of species, all carefully avoiding eye contact with the human table. They fear us, he said softly. Perhaps they should, but we fear ourselves more. That fear is what keeps us gentle. We have built our entire civilization around containing the monster inside us. Every law, every custom, every tradition is designed to keep us peaceful. We are the most heavily self-regulated species in the galaxy. And if that regulation fails, Thilla asked, if someone forces your hand again, if another Arxelia rises? Vasquez's expression did not change, but something shifted behind his eyes, something old and cold and patient. For just a moment, Thilla saw past the gentle scholar. She saw what was waiting underneath. Then pray for them, Vasquez said quietly, because we won't. The cold in his voice made Thilla shiver. She had heard many threats in her diplomatic career. This was not a threat. It was a simple statement of fact. Vasquez seemed to notice her reaction. The coldness faded from his eyes, replaced again by warmth and sadness. I am sorry, he said gently. I do not mean to frighten you. The truth is, we hate that part of ourselves. We wish it did not exist. For 4,000 years, we have tried to become something better, something worthy of the galaxy's trust. Have you succeeded? Thilla asked. Vasquez smiled, but there was no happiness in it. Ask me again in another 4,000 years. We are still trying. Every day we are still trying. They sat together in silence for a while, watching the peace ceremony unfold. Species that had been killing each other for years now shook hands and signed documents. It was strange how quickly enemies could become partners when the fighting stopped. What do you think would have happened? Thilla asked eventually. If the Vorith had crossed into your space? If the war had come to humanity? Vasquez considered the question for a long moment. We would have won, he said simply. The Vorith are dangerous, but they are not prepared for what we would have become. No one is. He paused. But the victory would have destroyed us, not physically. We would have survived. But the people we have worked so hard to become, the civilization we have built with such care, all of that would have been lost. We would have become monsters again. And once you become a monster, it is very hard to become anything else. Thilla thought about this. She thought about the wall of allied ships that had stood between the Vorith and human space. She thought about the thousands who had died to maintain that barrier. We sacrificed so much to keep you out of the war, she said. We never told you, but that was the real reason for the barrier. We were not protecting you. We were protecting the Vorith. We were protecting ourselves from what you might become. Vasquez nodded slowly. We know. Admiral Chen understood what you were doing. We were grateful. More grateful than you can imagine. He reached out and gently touched her hand. His skin was warm. His grip was soft. Thank you for keeping us chained, he said. Thank you for keeping the monster asleep. We could not have done it ourselves. Thilla looked at this small, fragile creature, this descendant of the species that had erased an entire civilization from existence, this gentle man who carried genocide in his blood. She finally understood. The humans were not dangerous because they were evil. They were dangerous because they were capable of anything. Love and hate, creation and destruction, mercy and vengeance. They contained all of it, held together by nothing but choice and will, and the desperate hope that they could be better than their ancestors. The most terrifying thing about humanity was not their weapons or their rage. It was that they knew exactly what they were, and they kept choosing, every day, to be something else. Thilla squeezed the human's hand gently. You are welcome, she said. May you never have to wake again. Vasquez smiled, and in that smile, she saw both the monster and the man, forever at war with each other, forever held in balance. She hoped that balance would last forever, but she knew deep in her hearts that nothing lasts forever. All she could do was hope that when the monster woke again, she would not be there to see it.